The Senate's bipartisan report on the failures of the U.S. Secret Service protecting former President Trump is causing quite a stir in Washington this week. And for the first time in recent memory, a presidential candidate is skipping the Al Smith Catholic Charity Dinner in New York City. Joining me now with analysis of this and much more, senior political editor and Washington correspondent at the Blaze News, Chris Bedford. Chris, thanks for being here. I want to begin with this blockbuster bipartisan congressional report on the performance of the Secret Service in the wake of not one but two assassination attempts on former President Trump. Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal had this to say about the report. What happened on July 13th was an accumulation of errors that produced a perfect storm of stunning failure. It was a tragedy and completely preventable from the outset. There was both a failure to provide resources like a working radio, drone detection system, and counter-surveillance team, and lack of an effective chain of command. Looking forward, we need structural reform in the agency itself. Chris, your thoughts on these findings of this bipartisan report? Blumenthal, certainly no fan of Donald Trump. Is Congress finally treating this as a threat to the entire country rather than just a targeted political exercise at one party or the other?
Yes, I think Senator Blumenthal has been rather impressive on this. And I've been surprised at how vocal, just how incredibly vocal he has been. He hasn't tried to make this about gun control or anything else. He's been talking explicitly about the Secret Service. And we really started to get this idea during Barack Obama's presidency. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I first came to D.C., walking by the White House, I just assumed that there were snipers everywhere and the whole place was completely guarded. And then under Barack Obama, we learned that you could actually land a homemade helicopter in the White House lawn, or maybe you could get through the front door if you're real sneaky about it. That the Secret Service had a lot of reputation, but the protocols, the training, the hiring process, the checks and balances had really broken down. And the number of these which broke down the day that Donald Trump was almost assassinated, a day that Blumenthal and other Democrats know was not good for their party, was not good for the country, was not good for anyone. They look at the mistakes here and they're saying, what was going on? The lack of communication. Why did one special agent in charge, or one special agent who was supposedly in charge, know that there was a credible threat on the ground, but not communicate that to the agents who were actually there? Breakdowns like that are inexcusable. The only reason that Donald Trump wasn't killed is because of the wind and an act of God. It had nothing to do with the Secret Service succeeding.
Yeah, Chris, look, the report shows the gravity and the magnitude of the failure here by the Secret Service. But the president and vice president, Biden and Harris, have yet to call out the agency for the security breakdown, not only in Butler, but later in Florida. Why not, given their positions and their vulnerabilities? Your thoughts on this?
I think they don't care. I really don't think that this is, I think they obviously don't want to see it happen, but it's not something that's going to move the needle on getting Harris and the Biden administration essentially reelected. They don't want to criticize it. They don't want to give it any more airtime. If you watch that shameful, probably only debate we're going to have, the moderators never even brought it up. Donald Trump had to actually bring it up. They're trying to memory hole it, but it's not really working. I mean, if you walk into, I was just on summer vacation a few weeks ago. All of the T-shirt shops that sell pop culture and rock shirts were selling Trump T-shirts with the assassination picture on it. It's entered pop culture is out of their control.
Yeah. Donald Trump was briefed this week by U.S. intelligence on alleged assassination threats coming from Iran, according to his campaign. Now, the Republican candidate was informed of, quote, real and specific threats aimed at destabilizing the United States. Here's what the former president had to say from North Carolina this week.
But if I were the president, I would inform the threatening country, in this case Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself to smithereens. We're going to blow it to smithereens. You can't do that. And there would be no more threats. There would be no more threats. But right now, we don't have that leadership or the necessary people, the necessary leaders.
Do you entirely buy this Iran explanation, though? I mean, these two would-be assassins were radicalized political opponents of the president.
Well, yeah, they had nothing to do with Iran, as far as I can tell. There's
Right.
been no evidence put forward of that. The CIA likes to, and the intelligence services certainly like to whisper about foreign plots every time there's an inconvenient story for them. But Iran definitely does have kill teams. People like Mike Pompeo have to live with 24/7 security because they've got a death mark. That's what happens when you kill Iran's top assassins. But Donald Trump proved this. I mean, people in D.C. like to pretend that things are extremely complicated and can't be fixed. We can't slow down or even stop illegal immigration. We can't cause these rogue nations to behave. Well, Donald Trump, just in 4 years, even with an administration that wasn't always functioning at the highest level and had a lot of people pushing back against it, was able to do that in the southern border and was able to get countries like Iran, leave them poor or leave them weaker, knock off their top people with impunity because he walked loudly, but he carried a big stick and was willing to use it.
Shifting to the presidential campaign, Democratic presidential nominee Vice President Kamala Harris announced she's skipping this year's Al Smith dinner in New York City. Instead, she'll be focused on campaigning in New York. Now, look, as most of our viewers know, and I know as you know, Chris, the Al Smith dinner is this big archdiocesan charitable fundraiser, and it's always been kind of a bipartisan, good-natured affair that traditionally hosts both presidential candidates. Donald Trump announced he will be attending. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Archbishop of New York, had this to say.
We were looking forward to giving the Vice President an enthusiastic welcome. She speaks very much about the high ideals and how it's good to get away from division and come together in unity and all. We're not used to this. We don't know how to handle it. This hasn't happened in 40 years since Walter Mondale turned down the invitation. And remember, he lost 49 out of 50 states. Now, I don't want to say there's a direct connection there.
Chris, Dolan later chalked it up to Harris getting bad advice. What do you make of the vice president's decision to forego this dinner?
Well, she probably did get some bad advice, but she's also got it coming from herself. She is the most openly anti-Catholic candidate for any major party for president in decades and decades and decades. She's someone who says the Knights of Columbus are an extremist organization, the kind of thing that could bar someone from being able to be a judge. She's not just a vociferous defender of abortion, but she publicly goes after those groups that go out and try to help single mothers and struggling mothers to care for their children and provide millions of dollars in medical support and diapers and all the incredibly expensive things that you need. She lights up when she talks about abortion. She considers Catholics to be radical. So they probably looked at this dinner. A lot of her staff completely lack American history and the basics of that. Don't realize that it's a good-natured bipartisan affair that always yields some couple of good headlines, some jokes. People can be a little lighthearted while raising money for a good cause. And also, like Walter Mondale, she's possibly losing this election. She needs to be out there campaigning.
Yeah. Well, she's down 5 points in the Pew, poll with Catholics. We'll see how far she actually is. But if that's a bellwether for the direction of this campaign, could be bad for her. But look, Chris, how can she stand there? You saw that Stephanie Rule interview this week on MSNBC. Now, that was a friendly, cushy, but they were practically spooning in the middle of that interview. And still, Kamala Harris was flat-footed, couldn't really find a through line. She was lost at many moments. You can only imagine her there on the stage in a gown when Donald Trump is calling her out for being anti-Catholic. I don't think she knows how she would respond, and they worry about that image, right?
That's why they have to hide her. She is uniquely bad at this. That's why she was not just the last choice of Democratic voters in the primary, but she was the last choice for Democratic Party poobahs when they were trying to figure out what to do about replacing Joe Biden. She's not up to this job. Every time she talks, she sounds like someone giving a book report on a book she didn't read and trying to reach a minimum word count that she can't even possibly get to by just filling it in with word salad. And it shows when she's in public.
Yeah, or maybe her staff wants to avoid a moment like this. This is the vice president earlier this week. Listen, Chris.
There's a time for patience, and there's a time for impatience. That's not in Ecclesiastes.
Or Ecclesiastes. Chris, Harris seems to be losing altitude in the swing states and overall in the latest polls. I mean, she's even down among Notre Dame kids. You saw that poll of kids from Notre Dame. They haven't supported a Republican in over a decade. Why is Harris flagging after that big boomlet we saw?
Ecclesiastics sounds like a good cardio workout to me. And I bet if you polled church-attending Catholics, her numbers would be even lower. She's not. I feel like not enough Catholic leaders have really broadcast just how anti-Catholic she is. The Catholic vote itself, as a voting bloc, hasn't really held together since the bishops, I think, spent it unwisely on John F. Kennedy because he was Catholic, even though he didn't back any Catholic positions at all. Since then, it started to splinter and lean Democratic, largely because Catholics are from the North and places like that, where there is a lot more Republican voting than down in the South. So once you're actually starting to lose Catholics and the cultural Catholics and those who say they check the box in the poll but maybe don't go to Mass except on Christmas and Easter, then you're really in trouble as a candidate. It shows how broad her unpopularity is.
Before we run out of time, President Biden showed up this week. He addressed the UN, pledging even more support to Ukraine.
We're launching a joint declaration of support for Ukraine, recovery, and reconstruction to make it clear we stand with Ukraine now and in the future. That starts on the battlefield. I'm determined to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to prevail in its fight for survival.
Chris, your thoughts on this endless well of support by the Biden administration, billions of dollars to Ukraine, even furnishing them now. There are calls to give them missiles that can reach the interior of Russia.
Yeah, and those are the missiles that Zelensky is really campaigning to get. Those are the missiles he thinks he can use to negotiate really hard and force a treaty on Putin. But it's also a massive escalation. And Putin, who's actually been a little measured in his saber rattling towards the West, has said this will be a cause for escalation and potential war with NATO. Something that really is, you really do want to avoid. Can you imagine the French and the German military in the front lines? They have not been fighting very many wars in the past few decades and are completely unprepared for this sort of escalation. At the same time, you have Senate Republicans out there, Mitch McConnell, walking through the Senate halls with Zelensky, even while Zelensky's campaigning against Donald Trump. They're showing, and they're going to try and do this in the omnibus, that no matter who is elected in this coming election, the money will keep on flowing. The Senate will make sure that billions and more dollars of American taxpayers go to the continuing this war with no end in sight. I mean, if Lindsey Graham has his way, there will be 10 years of U.S. taxpayer support guaranteed for Ukraine, and no president will be in charge of our foreign policy.
It's amazing. Both parties, you always find a plurality in both parties, Chris, who will support unending wars no matter where they are. It's astounding. It's the only bipartisan issue you can really find in D.C. Another story that seems to get little attention from this administration is illegal immigration and criminal illegal aliens. In a multi-day operation, ICE's Boston office this week rounded up 4 illegal aliens charged with rape, sexual assault of children, and upon the residents in Nantucket, who were all previously released by law enforcement despite the charges. The 4, 2 Salvadorans, a Brazilian, and a Guatemalan, were all gotaways. Massachusetts is, of course, a sanctuary state. Your thoughts on this latest news and how it reflects on Harris's trip to the border, which she's making any day now?
Well, it shows you that there is no border. That this is in Nantucket, which I grew up in Massachusetts. Nantucket is not easy to get to. And it also shows that, unfortunately, it's really particularly tragic because I still don't think this is going to be affecting the rich people of that island. Even though it's a very small island, where if you go to a bar in Nantucket, it's strange. You'll see the postman hanging out with a billionaire, and they know each other. In general, a lot of the wealthy people are sequestered on their estates or at the clubs. They have their own land. And a lot of the people who work that island, who are in the service industries, the people who are crowded into apartments because it's very expensive so they can work a job that summer, I guarantee you these are some of the people whose children are falling prey to this kind of animal behavior.
The CBP data shows that there were nearly 2 million gotaways who have evaded capture and snuck back into the United States during the Biden administration. I mean, it's a staggering statistic. These are just 4 that happen to be criminal elements. But God knows how many others are in those 2 million, that 2 million count. Chris, we've got 39 days until the election on November 5th. What do you think we'll see on Election Day? Any predictions at this point? What are you seeing in the trends in the polls?
Well, the trends in the polls are moving in the right direction for Republicans and the wrong correct direction for Democrats. I can only assume that the Democrats' internal polling is pretty bad, considering how they're still pushing for a debate. They're still talking about that. They're putting Kamala Harris out there more and more. They put Joe Biden on The View. this is a sign that they're starting to try and shift their strategy because they're looking at those numbers. They're knowing that Donald Trump is always undercounted. They're looking at how he's down by a little or up by a couple points in state after state. Listen, it's still a toss-up. People still need to come out and vote. But this election has got Democrats worried, and I think rightly.
We will leave it there. Read Chris Bedford's commentary. You can find it at The Blaze News at theblaze.com/Bedford. Follow him on X at CBedfordDC. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Raymond.